Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I welcome you very much to the 24th webinar in our series. And we are focusing today on rising to the restoration challenge in keeping with the launch week of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. My name is Ingrid Kutsia, and I'm the Director of Biodiversity, Nature and Health at ICLEI, and I'm going to be your session chair, and I welcome you all, both speakers and the participants, very much on behalf of ICLEI, also our city's Biodiversity Centre, the Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments, and then I just want to also just recognize the generous support from the EU Biodiversity Framework support program that makes these webinars possible. And these are all of the partners you can see on the screen. We have a lot of partners, and we are very happy for the support of all our partners. And just a few quick housekeeping rules. We are asking everybody to keep their video and their speakers on silent and the videos off to save bandwidth. As you will have heard at the beginning, these webinars are recorded, and the fact that you participate in the webinar means that you consent to being recorded. And then we will make the webinar recordings available. You can see on the screen, that is the link to find them. And then you can also see on the screen where our next webinar dates will be, the 1st of July. And we repeat them at 10 and 3 South African Standard Time, or UTC+2 every month. Thank you. So let's carry on. This is our program. We have a really impressive lineup of speakers, and I will introduce them shortly. I'm going to quickly talk a little bit, give you some updates, and then we're going to focus on the presentations from our speakers. Just on the roadmap between now and the CBD COP15 in October this year, we are in an important stage of the roadmap. We are engaged in negotiation discussions at the subsidiary bodies on science, technology, and also the implementation body. And there are also several dialogues happening within countries between the different levels of government. For example, in Peru, there's just been one recently, and then next one scheduled for Colombia, Canada, China, Mexico, and there are many more. And then just quickly to say what's happening at the subsidiary bodies meetings, the plenary sessions. A very important date was the 28th of May, where there was the first reading on a proposed decision around engagement with subnational governments, cities and other local authorities to enhance the implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. There was strong support from several of the parties. You can see up on the screen there. There were also some written comments from Argentina. And there was a joint statement made by ICLEI and our network partners, which include Regions 4, the Advisory Committee on Subnational Governments, and many others. And this joint statement was supported by numerous countries as well. So we are very excited, and we certainly hope that at COP15, this draft decision will be adopted. And then just also quickly to say that ICLEI, as one of the global partners of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, was very honored to be able to launch a high-level panel on the 1st of June. These are some of the amazing speakers that we had there. There were some more as well. We had a really amazing and very inspiring discussion around what cities are doing and what they're planning to do around restoring ecosystems within their areas of jurisdiction. And with this, I'm going to introduce our speakers. I will run through all of them first, and I will ask them to just put their videos on so that everybody can see them. We have Dr. Anita van Wyk. She's the Senior Professional Officer focusing on social ecological systems at ICLEI Africa. And then we also have Peter Viborn. He is from Sweden in Stockholm. He's the Senior Project Manager, Ecosystem Services in the Environment and Health Department. And he will be our second speaker. Then our third speaker will be Sebastian Schlecht. He's involved with strategic management in the Green Capital of Europe Department for Environment, Mobility and Sports from the city of Essen. And then finally, we also have a speaker from Puerto Princesa city in the Philippines. And the original speaker was Carlo Gomes, and unfortunately he's not available. So we are very, very happy to know that Zorino Colasero will speak on his behalf and do that presentation. And with this, I am going to hand over to Anita van Wyk. I will stop sharing so that she can share her slides with us. Thank you so much, and over to you, Anita.
Thanks, Ingrid. Okay, let me share my screen.
And maybe, Anita, while you're busy doing that, I just want to say to the participants, if you have any questions, please post them. I see there is one already in the question and answer box. You can post them there, or you're also welcome to post them in the chat. We will keep an eye on that. If there is time available at the end, we will answer some of those questions. But I'm going to ask my speakers, because we have quite a long program today, just to watch the Q&A and chat box. And if there are questions directed to you, please feel free to answer them in the Q&A or chat box. Thank you. Over to you, Anita.
Super, thanks, Ingrid. And good day, everybody. Ingrid, I just want to check, can you see my slide?
Sorry, yes, I can.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I'll go ahead. Great, so good day, everybody. It's my pleasure today to be able to present a few points on work that we're doing with the city of Johannesburg in South Africa on catchment management planning. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about this process and some of the challenges that we've experienced, and also talk about the context of catchment management planning within restoration. So this is happening within the catchment, the Jukskei catchment you can see in the map in the bottom right-hand corner there. It's in the northeastern corner of the city of Johannesburg. It's a highly urbanized, highly built-up catchment, about 240 square kilometers. And the Jukskei catchment has issues. So this is fairly typical of urban catchment in Africa. The demand for settlement, encroachment into river courses, urban development, and the extreme hardening of catchment surfaces really leading to increased flooding and higher flood peaks, and all the disaster risk necessities that come with that. Loads of fecal and solid waste pollution issues, aging infrastructure, both in terms of waste and stormwater systems, and so on. You know, the list goes on. And these issues are not uncommon in the context of urbanized African cities, so and catchments that become urbanized. I think one of the things I want to say on the slide is that this is not atypical, but I think what we do want to point out is that there's so many demands on the land in the catchment and on the river resources and on aquatic resources that and everybody's interdependencies are key. And so we really need interdisciplinary and holistic approaches that involve all stakeholders in catchment planning and in the restoration effort. This slide is about the water sensitive cities, and I like to show this because it shows an evolution in our thinking from fairly simple catchment planning to which in the old days represented water supply in a city, to, if you see on the right hand side of this diagram and the longer oval, a water sensitive city these days really represents a much more integrative planning process, linking service delivery functions to fairly complex sustainability challenges such as climate change, resilience, equity, and very complex problems that can only be solved with interdisciplinary and integrated planning. So this is the paradigm that we're trying to follow, and this was sort of the vision that we set ourselves. We wanted to create catchment management plans for the city of Johannesburg to guide their holistic management and rehabilitation in order to restore and rehabilitate rivers, reduce flooding, enhance our environmental resilience. and also restore the amenity functions and value of watercourses and riparian zones, rivers. And the Yukskay catchment was chosen as a pilot because we said we need to learn from an example. So there are 26 other catchment areas, or 27 in total in the city of Johannesburg, but we chose the Yukskay as a pilot to help us learn through this process. We're using the adaptive catchment management framework to do this planning, and it's a very logical sort of stepwise framework. We set a desired future condition, we identified management options, and scenarios play a big role in identifying management options, and I'll talk more about scenarios later on. Then the step 3 is about operationalizing these, and step 4 is all about evaluation and learning through the process. So objective setting is really forms the backbone, the essence of a plan. And we start off with a vision and high-level objectives that are broken down into sub-objectives. And those sub-objectives are in turn broken down into further sub-objectives. And eventually you end up with research goals and operational and institutional goals at the finest level of objective. What is nice about this kind of framework is it integrates people. So society and sort of members of society and senior level management would be getting involved in vision setting and objective, the higher level objectives, whereas operational managers and scientists will be more involved in setting goals such as operational and research goals. So you know, on the face of it, a really nice system to integrate people into this process and to make people accountable to each other in the process. In this project, we've been very fortunate to have the luxury of the use and the development of a hydrological model in this process. So a catchment management plan can be developed without a hydrological model, but a hydrological model really is very, very useful in producing baseline information, but also in supporting the development of scenarios, because a hydrological model can tell us something about the responses of different management interventions. And therefore it helps us with decision making because we can compare and communicate. So it's really, I think in this presentation, I want to emphasize that we've used the hydrological model so much as a communication tool in this process. In March this year, the hydrological model was completed towards the end of last year. And from the beginning of this year, we started engaging with stakeholders in the city of Johannesburg with model scenarios. And we use this, as I said, very much as a communication tool to ask city functional units whether they can see a connection between their work and their priorities and catchment issues. And we presented basic scenarios to them and also asked them to help us create new scenarios based on this understanding. As I said, the hydrological model really helps us to establish a lot of baseline information, which is really useful. This is one of the outputs of the model, and you can just focus on that the red bit there. It actually shows that post-development, the runoff volume has increased tenfold due to catchment hardening. And this is really just because the catchment has become largely impervious. And but now this has led to a massive increase in the volume of runoff that we get. And at the moment for the Yukskay catchment, that is an equivalent of about 38 million cubic meters. And this is a lot of water, and it has implications for flooding. But if you look at it from a positive perspective, it also creates opportunities for aspects such as additional water use, water harvesting, and the storage of water. So it creates opportunities in the catchment. So I want to share with you just two of the scenarios we used and we shared with stakeholders. This one is a water quality analysis, which the model is able to handle water quality aspects. And you can see on the map the red areas are areas in the Yukskay catchment, in the Yukskay River, that reflect very poor water quality, which is basically the entire main stem of the river. You can see the tributaries colored in green and yellow denote slightly improved water quality. But what the scenario is trying to show is that if you're trying to design artificial wetlands for water treatment and for improving water quality, it shows that if you're going to have an intervention like this around about the middle area of the catchment, you're going to need a wetland of about 125 hectares. If you're trying to do the same intervention at the upper end of the catchment, you only need about 33 hectares, or in some places just 9 hectares. And this helps with planning and helps us with also garnering investment for this sort of intervention. Another scenario that we used and which attracted quite a lot of interest and attention is retrofitting the catchment with greening and creating more permeable surfaces in the catchment. So the model in this case, we ran the model with the assumption that we're going to retrofit the catchment with a 50% permeable surfaces, in other words, making it more spongy. And then the overall runoff can be reduced by more than 40%. And this has big implications for managing flooding and flood risk. So these sorts of scenarios created a platform for us to discuss the what ifs of the future. How can we do this? A 50% permeable surfaces is quite a big ask of any urban catchment. And so that's probably a little bit of an overshoot, but it started the conversation and started the engagement. So we showed quite a few scenarios, many scenarios to different stakeholders, and I've only shown you 2, but we've done quite a few of them, and have had really a rich response and very interesting reactions to those. And we can say that so far we can learn that the connections between the city department functions and catchment and hydrological implications of these functions are not so well understood, and this needs a far more exploration. But we have found that the scenarios have opened doors to this understanding, and there's enthusiastic interest from city departments as they start to engage the different scenarios and try and link them to their own priorities and, importantly, to their own terminologies. The second lesson I think we've learned so far is that stakeholders have started to see the value of scenarios in making their case. For example, when we spoke with City Parks Department, they started understanding that providing evidence for when they ask for additional funding to create or expand their parks, they can use a hydrological argument also, and the co-benefits of a hydrological response to make a case for open space in cities. Also, there was a scale issue. Many stakeholders felt that the scale at which they operate and a bigger catchment scale, it was difficult for them to make that connection. And so for us, our job is to work harder at looking at the smaller scales and creating a platform where we can discuss how those smaller scale interventions, when they are scaled up across the catchment, what the hydrological model tells us about that across larger scales. So I think that the overall point is that there's a technical process in terms of creating and running the model, but there's so much, the social process needs so much attention in this, in engaging with stakeholders and understanding their needs and priorities and linking with specific functions within a city. This is my last slide. And I'm back to this sort of objectives hierarchy, because my take-home message for today is to say that, we set out to develop these objectives. But what we found is that the road to setting these objectives with diverse stakeholders requires far more interdisciplinary and shared understanding than we imagined at the start of the process. Another take-home message is that we are finding that scenarios supported by the hydrological model can help unlock an interest in this among stakeholders and help make the connection between their priorities and catchment planning. So I think with that, Ingrid, that's my last slide there. So I'll stop sharing.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And our next speaker, I'm going to just introduce, I have mentioned him as well, Peter Viborn. If you can, I believe you also have some slides that you would like to share. So if you want to share your screen, and I'm going to hand over to you, and the floor is all yours. I look forward to your presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingrid. And thank you for this opportunity to share some parts of the work we are doing in the city of Stockholm regarding biodiversity. I'm working at the Environment and Health Administration in the city as an ecologist and senior project manager, mainly dealing with ecosystem services and climate adaptation, so it's a broad field. I would like to talk some minutes about the city's new biodiversity action plan, and then I will share some very practical examples from recent work in different parts of the city. And I suppose as we are sitting all around the world, this is also an insight of what Stockholm looks like at the moment. Stockholm is a green capital, a lot of water and green structures within the gray structure. It's composed by these green wedges stretching from the countryside into the city of Stockholm. And what we are trying to achieve is to keep these wedges, to enhance the weak connections, and also to establish connectivity routes for different species and biotopes. Last year, we adopted the Biodiversity Action Plan, actually the first one in Stockholm. And the plan was produced by the ecologists at the Environmental and Health Administration, but in really broad participation and involvement from all city administrations and companies, as well as in close communication with the academia, NGOs, and citizen groups in Stockholm. It consists of 5 strategies, each of which containing a number of tasks aiming at a number of stakeholders. So the first strategy highlights some of the most important nature qualities and presents some of the species that are representatives for those nature qualities. So I will give you some examples. First, we have the beaches, the lakes, creeks, and shores around the city, which serve as spawning grounds, and they offer connectivity and both great beauty and rich diversity. Here we work with both legislation, management, and monitoring. The second one is the cultural open landscape. The city's landscape is historically characterized by agriculture, and we still have some larger areas with grassland, even though the farming has stopped since long time. And here proper maintenance is vital for keeping and restoring these rich biotopes. The third one is the cultural woodland. Due to numerous cultural reasons, we still have old oaks and pine trees in the limits of the city that are up to 800 years old, actually. Most of them were cut down in the 17th century, but after stopping producing wooden warships, they have been left alone, more or less. And last but not least, the everyday close residential nature is especially important for a number of reasons for citizens of all ages. This truth has become evidently true even more during the pandemic. So we need to work with all these different aspects of nature around the city. Then we choose a number of target species. They were selected for conservation values, but also on purpose we choose like cute and interesting species as archetypes for biodiversity in the city, as one way to communicate biodiversity with the citizens. Even if some species are really vulnerable, they are not so cute, so to say, to the everyday man. So we try to choose very carefully which species we should present as archetypes. The second strategy in the action plan is about planning, building, managing, monitoring. By taking biodiversity into consideration in every step of the development process, we hope to build more sustainable and preserve the values we so much need for a livable city life. The third strategy is about implementing measures of ecological reinforcement. And pointing directly to the main topic of this webinar, I will soon give you some very practical examples on how we do to favor coarse trees, to increase landscape connectivity and reduce barrier effects, to increase species diversity in grasslands and plantings, and to strengthen the beaches and shores as habitats. All of these are also connected to the global sustainability goals, which forms as a baseline for every action we do. We have identified 5 areas within the different city districts. Each of them have their own administration, but in this term they have been grouped into 5 areas based on the ecological green-blue structure. And by this, we are in a way short-circuiting the responsibility borders in the city, which gives a lot of positive effects, but it's not always easy. So we are creating a map which is more natural than the man-made usual borders. For each area and for the city as a whole, we analyze the changes, the threats, the barriers, and the needed actions to enhance the ecological infrastructure of the city. And the analysis shows us the need for action on landscape level. Now, some restoration examples. What you can see in the map in the middle or a little bit to the right of the screen, you see the Stockholm city. So we are now situated to the southwest of Stockholm in a housing area which is considered vulnerable. A lot of social issues is happening here, but still they do have a lot of nature close to the housing areas. Here, the Vårbergstoppen was built by excavated masses, just putting them in the big pile in the 70s. And since then, the vegetation has established itself spontaneously, and the hill has sort of undergone a rapid primary succession. But during 2017 to 2020, a collaboration in a project called Green Stockholm restored Vårbergstoppen to a city park with high biodiversity and also high accessibility for the inhabitants surrounding this area. We had to make the decision to deviate from the free development in order to invest in semi-open grasslands, which in fact are some of the environments that have decreased the most in Sweden in the last 100 years. So in the restoration phase, we have opened up and aimed at different percentage distributions between open ground and shrub layers. And this has been done by manual and robot clearing in steep sections, and then planting of about 25,000 seedlings of different, most local species that have been deemed possible to establish and fairly fits well in the biotope. The management plan is divided in 6 different areas, all with different needs. It is a bit challenging here since it's so steep in some parts, so we need different management plans for different areas. One is the more open, flat areas, which have a rich biodiversity in the field layer. Here we use tractor with moving beam and baling, and if we can afford it, also manually clear cut blades cutting and manual pickup of the grass that is cut down. This establishes a long-term rich biodiversity. The second is an area with dense grass, bushes, and low trees, where species like the nightingale just love to thrive. And here we have not so intensely managing restoration, but we use tractors with moving beam and baler here. Then we have areas with more shade and denser canopy, more trees of different species. Here we let the trees develop freely, more or less, eventually some clearing and prioritizing important tree species. A lot of microhabitats we can find here. And then in the steeper sides, like a slalom slope, we use these distant controlled robot cutters, which has been very effective. Grazing would be great here, but at the moment, the need for fencing and protection of the animals restricts the possibilities to use grazing animals here. And we don't have so much farmers in the Stockholm city now. The second example comes from close to where I live. It's grasslands or lawns actually being transferred to flowering meadows. The warmer situation in residential areas are lawns between the houses, and they're cut by machines and with a very limited number of species present, and easy and fairly cheap for maintenance. But to enhance the biodiversity in such spaces, parts of the lawns are being transferred to urban meadows by planting different seedlings and changes in maintenance. And the communication to the citizens is vital. The sign says, here we are creating a meadow, here we let the grass grow to provide more food and space for our insects in order to increase biodiversity. Because we often find the citizens ask us, why has the city stopped mowing the grass? It looks really messy. What's it good for? Where do all our money from our taxes go, actually? And here we find bird species like the European goldfinch. It thrives in these areas, and it's coming back to these areas, actually. One of the most colorful birds in Sweden, it is. Next example comes from a newly formed nature reserve, where a number of ponds, new ponds from amphibians are being made. And we're also enhancing the accessibility to a former forgotten marshland area. No one would go there, maybe good for some biodiversity, but the restoration is giving a much richer, much broader array of the species here. And we started actually to use very simple but effective actions to transform this. This is going to be the entrance to the new nature reserve, and just by making it a bit more welcoming, people get curious about what can we find here. No one would go easily into the area on the left, and on the right side, people start to walk here, take the dog walks and so on. And also the marshland, you can see the before and after. Even if it's different seasons, you can see it's a more attractive biotope for both humans, insects, frogs, and other amphibians. So we're trying to really show how the changes affects both people and species. And
Peter,
of course, yes.
I'm sorry, I have to ask you to wrap up. It's so interesting, but we have some more speakers, but it's really lovely. Thank you.
I will just, and also the accessibility to make it possible for the frogs to meet the people in the area. So I have some more examples in the slide, but I will share the slides so you can look at them afterwards. I'm sorry that I been going over the time for some time.
No, I think it's really lovely, and we will share these slides. But really, as I said, so sorry to have to shorten you. Oh, I love that one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter. That's really a lovely way to end. And with this, I'm going to hand over now to Sebastian Schlecht. He is from the city of Essen, and I believe he has some slides as well. So if you want to share your screen, Sebastian. And just while he does that, just to let everybody know, we did put in a link to a series of webinars that's coming up in June on local, as part of the IUCN Local Action Summit, and the link was shared in the chat box. Thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you, Ingrid. Maybe you can just confirm if you see my slide now.
Yes, I can. It looks great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining, and thanks for this great presentations we already had. So I'm Sebastian Schlecht. I'm invited to introduce you to the Emscher Restoration Project. I'm from the city of Essen, and we are a part of the Ruhr Metropolis, which is an area in Germany, in Western Germany, and we are an area which is covering 13 cities and has 5 million inhabitants. And the city of Essen is one part of this highly dense urban area. It's one of the biggest European conurbations, and the Emscher River is really a big part of the history. And you see what the Ruhr area looks today. Essen is somewhere here in the middle of this picture, and you really see that we could not define borders between cities or areas. This is what it looks like 200 years ago. You see two rivers in the south. The Ruhr River is given the name to the Ruhr metropolis, or the Ruhrgebiet, as the Germans say, and in the north, the dark line, you see the Emscher River. And the Emscher River is part of this story. It was a very slow running river in a more wetland, which was even not too easy to use for agriculture. And so in this area, there was the highest amount of wild horses in Europe 200 years ago. And so this is not a picture from 200 years ago. Sadly, we don't have much, but these horses also have been a part of the industrialization. This is the Zeche Zollverein, which was one of the most productive coal mines ever. And the coal mining, these horses have been used in coal mining because they have been very good workers. Through the coal mining, the whole area sunk, the earth level sunk of the whole area. And so this ecosystem of the river Emscher stopped working, and we had floods and problems with water. And as in these times, the Emscher River was also carrying all the wastewater of the all the new urban areas, and also from the industries. We had big problems like 100 years ago with floodings, and also with cholera and other problems caused by the wastewater. So a big solution in these times was to bring that Emscher River into a technical system. So this was a ecosystem deconstruction project on a regional level. And this Emscher River became an open sewer system in the whole region. And it needed to be an open sewer because of the coal mining. The earth level was not stable all over. So it was changing for centimeters every year. And the open sewer was, they have been able to maintain these open sewers and over the years. The whole northern area where we today also live was an industrialized area. So we had lots of coal mines and related industries like steel production, power plants. And you see in between everywhere spreading small housing areas, which not have been really in a city planning order, because many times the industries placed houses for their workers just close to their companies. In these times, these beautiful horses, which had the name Emscher Brücker Dickkopf, which means like thick head. So these beautiful horses, they did completely extinct. They're not, these horses are not there anymore. This is only one memorial to remember them. And still today, in some parts in the Emscher system, which is in the restoration phase, fading out, it's finished next year, looks like this. And you see this dirty water here still coming, but we have the Emscher restoration reconstruction project in the final stage. We will finish next year. You see on this slide the whole area, which is in the river restoration, which is covering several cities. And you see also by the thin lines, the small creeks connected to the Emscher River included in this whole water system restoration. The project started 30 years ago. It covers 865 square kilometers. The main pipes are 85 kilometers in the length, and still some numbers more. But what is interesting is that through bringing that wastewater into a closed and well-managed wastewater and water clearing system, we've been able to restore most parts of the Emscher River with rainwater, with clear rainwater. And this also affects very much the city areas, with the small creeks also transformed. And the starting point of this was the vision that we can transform this huge wasteland of 800 square kilometers into a park, into the Emscher Landscape Park. So this is, the Emscher was a stinky river. People living close to that river, they could not stay outside in the summer days when it was hot, because the whole river was just a stinky sewer. And to convert this into a landscape park was really a huge vision, and we see it coming to reality. And you see one example from the city area of Essen, which is the Borbecker Mühlbach, which is already restored. And this is also a huge quality for all people living close to these former sewers. And what was very beautiful to see, that there is another species, it's the Emscher Groppe. It's a small fish which was already expected to be extincted, but during the works on the Emscher River, they found some survived in a small part which was not used as a sewer in a side arm, and it was saved, and now it is living again all over in the Emscher River. Here you see the head of the Emscher Restoration Project and our mayor of the city of Essen, bringing that fish back to the water. And also the coal mining areas are well by species. So the Zollverein Coal Mine Park, which is close in 30 years, the coal mining has today more than 800 species and is a kind of special industrial nature, which is a rewilded industrial area, and the park design is very simple design, leaving most of the species by themselves, which cover the area through their own spread through the years. On the city level, we have we connected to the Emscher Valley program by a program that is called New Ways to the Water. The idea is also to connect to the people, and we designed, or we built a green network over all the city, also connecting to regional routes. And we used waterways and railway lines to bring green routes for biodiversity, cycling and walking paths through all the city. And we implemented an unemployment educational program. So we include long-term unemployed people in the workforce and give them training in landscaping. And even some of them could be included in the labor market again. So we built this network by several small projects over 15 years. And even more today, the bigger projects we have in Essen are also well connected to rainwater management, because the Emscher River is bringing all that mindset to the region that rainwater has to be kept, has to be brought to that creeks, to that water systems. And this is quite an interesting story to tell. In Essen, we have been the green capital of Europe in 2017, and our green infrastructure management was one of the main goals we had in the jury announcement. On the regional level, we have also great programs still continuing, and we have, accordingly to the decade of ecosystem restoration, we have the offensive green infrastructure 2030. We call it the green decade of the rural metropolis, and we are heading to the International Horticulture Exhibition in 2027, which both of these programs will bring the green infrastructure and the ecosystem in the focus. And what is really interesting, that the Emscher Restoration Program is managed by the former sewer responsible regional authority, which is completely financed through the wastewater fees of all the region. So there is a huge ecosystem restoration financed by wastewater fees and completely implemented by the wastewater responsible companies. And the last slide is that we are also working on a regional biodiversity strategy, where the first position paper has been published. Sorry, this is only available in German today. And we have the Regional Planning Association, which is kind of a regional holding of all the cities, and they implement this biodiversity strategy also in the green infrastructure strategy of this green decade. Yeah, I think landscape is the way to go for our cities, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. That was really interesting. And what strikes me is each of these presentations are so different. It's so interesting to see how the different cities across the world come up with very different ways of dealing with similar problems. And we go now to our last speaker, Zorina Culasero, and she is from the Philippines, from the city of Puerto Princesa, sorry. Zarina, it is over to you. I believe that we are going to share the screens, the slides for you. I just want to check that the team is ready with that.
Hello, thank you, Ingrid. Before I start, in behalf of our City Mayor, Lucila Orbayron, and our City Enro Attorney Carlo Gomez, we would like to thank ICLEI for organizing this webinar and giving us the opportunity to present our mangrove restoration activities. It's really a great privilege. We do the mangrove restoration activity in Puerto Princesa City using the Community Act strategy. We are, through the involvement of and participation of different sectors of the society, involving the different organizations, all walk of life is participating in that particular activity. We have prepared a video for you to see what we are doing in our mangrove restoration activity. Can we please ask for the to operate the video?
Puerto Princesa City is located at the midsection of the Strip of Palawan Province in the southwestern Philippines. It is dubbed as a city in the forest. It has a total land area of 219,339 hectares, of which 6% is covering the 35 urban barangays and the rest by 31 rural barangays. It has a total population of 255,116 since the 2015 census. The land cover of the city is dominated with forests, mostly are secondary forests comprising 70% of its total land area. The eastern and western portion of the city has a total coastline of 416 kilometers, and the mangrove area is approximately 6,349 hectares. The location of the city served as opportunities to venture on ecotourism and fisheries as main industries in the city. Puerto Princesa is also known to be part of the Philippines' last ecological frontier, being the habitat of several wildlife species. The city government of Puerto Princesa aims to protect and to conserve the environment and its remaining natural resources by implementing various programs and activities. One of which is the Love Affair with Nature, which was started in February 14, 2003, when the Girl Scout from San Jose High School, together with the city mayor, other city officials, barangay officials, and personnel from the Office of the City Environment and Natural Resources, conducted mangrove tree planting in approximately 2 hectares of mangrove area in Barangay San Jose. The former city mayor was impressed with the success of the activity and remarked to make the tree planting activity a regular and continuing activity like our Pistayang Kagiban or the Feast of the Forest. As the event coincided with the Valentine's Day celebration, it was then named as Love Affair with Nature. It is the time of the year where Puerto Princesas are enjoined to participate in the tree planting of beech forest trees and mangrove tree species. The program comprises of activities such as establishment of nurseries to propagate mangrove and beech forest trees, tree planting activity, and the conduct of mass wedding ceremony. The love affair with nature was institutionalized through the passing of City Ordinance Number 287 on September 26, 2005, an ordinance declaring the February 14 of every year as Love Affair with Nature Day in the city of Puerto Princesa. The celebration aims to expand the Valentine's Day, an expression of love from customary person to person, to one that embraces Mother Nature, and as a continuing call to ensure the protection and sustainable use of our natural resources. For 18 years of project implementation, more than 90 hectares of mangrove areas has been rehabilitated. Initially, the program is only conducted to rehabilitate the denuded areas, but now it is being done as part of its contribution in the improvement of its blue carbon ecosystem. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, some people resorted to the destruction of our mangrove areas, which makes the task of the city government and its partners more challenging. Challenging as it may be, but we are committed to take part in the restoration, protection, and conservation of our mangrove areas.
May I request for the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes,
Sandine?
sure. I will just share my screen and then you will just tell me to move when you're ready. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next slide, please. So I'll be presenting to you some of the additional information about our love affair with nature. Actually, we have already planted, we have rehabilitated more than 90 hectares of denuded mangrove areas since 2013 for 18 years of its implementation. It is being implemented in different barangays of the city. And we are using, next slide, please. We are using different kinds of mangrove species. If you have seen in the video, there is a portion wherein there is the coconut plantation, which is about beach forest, beach area, wherein we try to rehabilitate it with beach forest type of species. So in that particular area, we use the Terminalia catapa, the Pongambia pinnata, and Diptaluto and Bitaog. So we're not able to present to you a photo of the area that has been rehabilitated or replaced with beech forest type species, but now it is more than 5 meters high, the trees that we planted in 2017. So hopefully in our next session, if ever, we will be able to present to you the photos of the rehabilitated areas. And if you will notice also in the video, there is a portion wherein there is a big area that has been denuded that was conducted in sometime in last year during the pandemic time, the start of the pandemic, because people resorted to clearing of mangrove areas for their livelihood. And that is a really big challenge for us in the city government and our partners. This pandemic not only affect the people, but also our ecosystem, not only the terrestrial ecosystem, but particularly our mangrove ecosystem. So these are the, as I have mentioned, these are the different species of mangroves, beech forest types, and others, 3 species that we use to rehabilitate our mangrove areas. So that's all for our Love Affair with Nature program, and I hope you are inspired by our program. We are part of that program is the mass wedding for I think every year there are more or less 100 couples that are getting married during that time. So thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you so much. That's an amazing one, and I just love that slide, the picture of the newlywed couple. I thought that was really lovely. It was really great. So I think I'm just trying to see if there are any questions that have come up. Maybe there's one. Yes, there is one question, and it's to you, Zarina. One of the participants wants to know what is the cause or the negative incentives from the man-made ecosystem destruction that was shown in the video.
Pardon?
So what caused that? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What was were there any negative effects coming from when there was a destruction of the ecosystem?
Yeah, it affects the wildlife species, particularly because most of our, that's why we call the last ecological frontier, because this is the habitat of most of our wildlife species. This is the house or the home for a number of endemic species. So the destruction of our mangrove ecosystem really affects not only the people living within the vicinity, it also affects the fishery industry, as it is the nursery of the fish, the mangrove areas, and also the house for the most of our avian species. Not only that, not only avian, but any other species of wildlife.
Okay, thank you so much. And we've come to the end of our webinar. Unfortunately, there's just so much more that we could have talked about, and I'm sure that many people will think of questions afterwards, but we will, for everybody's information, we do share the links to the recording as well as the PowerPoint presentation to all of the registered participants. And we do have more registered participants than sometimes active participants, so that this is spread out quite wide or disseminated widely. And what I also just want to announce, and I actually want to encourage all my speakers, and I say this as I thank you, because these presentations that you've done have been absolutely incredible and so inspiring. ICLEI is going to be launching a call on World Environment Day, which is the 5th of June, that's this week. And this is a call to cities and also to regions, sort of subnational levels of government, but specifically to cities, to ask them to share their stories. And it's the stories that you've been telling today. And I'm sure that there are many stories from each of your city. And basically what we want to do is we want to develop a storybook of stories, and we're going to be profiling it also through our Cities with Nature platform, which is a partnership initiative between ICLEI, the IUCN, the Nature Conservancy, but also organizations such as UNEP, WWF. And we have, you have the link there, and we're going to be sharing some of those stories on our platform, but also we will publish a publication. It will be announced through our ICLEI CBC Twitter account. That is at ICLEI CBC on the 5th. And the call is for cities to register, and then you will receive more information. And just to say that we are planning also on doing this more than once in this decade. So it will not be a once-off activity, because we know cities continually do work around their ecosystems. And we will, later this year, we're also going to announce a recognition award for the stories that have been shared by our cities. So I just wanted to share that with you as well. And then just finally, just to remind people that there is Cities with Nature. Those of you that have signed up, we are very happy about that. We are making various improvements. Those of you that do not yet know about it, please, there is the link, go and have a look, and there is a place to sign up. And then lastly, I just want to thank you very much for joining our webinar, and a special word of thanks to our speakers. We know that everybody is very busy, and for some of you it's very late, some of you it's very early in the day, but we really appreciate the very great lessons that you've shared with us and the work that has been done through the various cities that are represented here. So there is another webinar for those of you that are still awake this afternoon. You are welcome. It is available on that link. You can see it there. You are available to register and to listen into that. And with this, I'm going to say thank you to everybody, participants and speakers. Enjoy the rest of your day or your evening. Goodbye.